Good morning to all of you. So, in our last lecture, we studied centripetal force. So, let us recapitulate very briefly. Let me tell you what we studied. So, what we studied is that if a body is moving in a circular motion, then its direction is changing at every point. And since its direction is changing, so the velocity is changing, there is an acceleration. The acceleration is towards the center. Now, that acceleration is known as centripetal acceleration. Magnitude is v square by r. Now, in order to move that body, presently we are taking uniform circular motion, that means omega is constant. So in order to move it in a circle, there is a acceleration, we need a force. So what is that force? Force is mass times acceleration. That is m into v square by r. But this is the magnitude of the force, the estimated force. This is the net force that we need in order to move the body in a circle. But it is not in itself a force. Somebody has to provide that force. The real forces are something different. So what are the real forces? Gravitational force is a real force. Frictional force is a real force. Magnetic force is a real force. So these are the forces. The tension is a real force. So these are the forces that should be equal to mv square by r. Only then it can move in a circle. So this is what the essence of our last lecture. Now today we are going to start or deal with a very important topic, and this topic is quite confusing topic as well. So as you see, that topic is centrifugal force, and along with the centrifugal force we will also see what Coriolis force is, because both of them they occur together at many places. Now, this centrifugal force, there are a lot of confusions regarding this. In general, yes, we all have studied centrifugal force and we know what centrifugal force is. People generally say that in a rotating frame, when a body is moving, it experiences centrifugal force. Good, fine. But let me ask you one question. Suppose you are sitting there as an audience. You are an inertial frame. Is it possible that centrifugal force acts on your body by somehow? Well, the answer is yes, it is possible. It is possible if I, as an observer, I am rotating in a rotating frame. I am in a rotating frame. From that frame, if I observe you, then I have to apply centrifugal force. So, it is totally a frame dependent force. Now, even if a body like you are not in the rotating frame, you are not rotating, you are at rest in the inertial frame, but still, a centrifugal force, is acting on you when I will observe you. Okay, so this example I have explained in detail. So, the confusion again arises because in centrifugal force there are a large number of examples. One example is very different than the other. So that's why sometimes we feel that it is a mathematical concept, or sometimes we feel that no, there is we feel the force, we feel the thrust outside. Then there are different cases. So when the different cases we study different times, we get confused that something is happening somewhere, something is happening somewhere. So we need to basically study together. And in this lecture, what I have done, that I have collected all different kinds of cases and I have arranged them into types, different subtypes. Okay. So in that way, when we study, the confusion disappears. That is what I feel. Now, obviously, since I have collected a lot of examples, so the lecture is will obviously be long. And so what I have thought of actually is that the whole of this lecture I will divide into 3 parts. The first part, in the first part, I will be dealing with mostly the mathematical formulas. Derivations we are not going to do, just the basic mathematical concepts and the formulas that I will explain to you, along with the list of cases that we are going to deal with. In the second part, I will be dealing with the linear systems. In linear systems, we can understand pseudo-force better. So that is the one I will do in the second part. And the third part basically deals with the circular motion, that is the rotating frames. So this is the way it is done, and you can see at different times if you think that the lecture is too long. Okay, so let us start with the centrifugal force and also understanding Coriolis force. Other than the one more point that I would like to say, that see, when we study this, many a times it happens we don't get a feel of it. What actually is the centrifugal force? Mathematically it's okay, but what is it? That feel we don't have. And in this lecture, particularly lecture, so there are some confusions, but along with that, I would like to get a feel of it, that what actually is a centrifugal force, what actually is a Coriolis force, other than the mathematics part. Okay, so that is the goal of our lecture, that to get a feel of it, understanding it, physically understanding it, get a feel of it. So let us see. So first of all, let me tell you briefly what you have already studied, how we deal with the linearly accelerated frames. Alright, the general concepts and the mathematics and the formulas dealing with it. So linearly accelerated frames, before we go into the diagram, let me tell you 2 concepts which are there, and that concept should be clear. The one is observer and second is the object. So observer, in our cases, all these cases that we are going to deal with, in our case, observer is always in a accelerating frame, whether it is linearly or whether it is undergoing a circular motion, that is there, but observer is always in the accelerating frame. Now, other than the observer, there is an object. So object is that what an observer looks at, what is being observed. Now this object, let me write down one more word, and that is sometimes we use this word event. Now generally I would like to avoid this word event because we use this word in relativity. Okay. So the object can be in the inertial frame, it can be in the non-inertial frame. Usually we think that object is always in the non-inertial frame, but that is not necessary. It can be in the inertial frame also. So object can be in the inertial frame, object can be in the non-inertial frame. How will an observer in a non-inertial frame, whether it is linearly accelerating or it is a rotational frame, will observe? Okay, so I hope the concept of observer and the object is clear to us, or clear to you. Okay, now let us quickly see this diagram which you have seen many a times. This is a train, and the train is having an acceleration in the forward direction. Now there is an observer here on this train. So the observer is in an accelerating system which is linearly accelerating. In the train there is a pendulum, and the pendulum deflects. There is a deflection, there is some angle theta which you know very well. There is some angle theta and it gets deflected, but it is at rest there. that is an object in the non-inertial frame. I have said object A because these are the usual cases, that is object A. Now, the object can be outside the frame as well. That means there is a station over here and a man is standing over here. Okay. So, this is the picture. Now, what we see, like a observer in the train, which is accelerating frame, will see another object, that is your pendulum, at rest. Because this is what he will see, that this particular object is at rest in the accelerating frame. Now, he will see how he will see this person who is standing on the station. He will see this person as accelerating backward because he is accelerating in this direction. So, with respect to that observer, he will observe this person as accelerating backward. Okay. Now, this is what he will see. Now, let us come to the formulas and the concepts that we usually do. Now, these formulas, we are not going for any proof now. The proofs we will do it later in the chapter of non-inertial frame. What the concept is that in a non-inertial frame, when an observer is there, what he has to do in order to see any object, whether the object is in the inertial frame or in the non-inertial frame, one has to put a force which is known as pseudo force. That is your MA, mass of the object, multiplied by the acceleration of the frame in a direction opposite to, in this direction it is going, accelerating, opposite to in which the frame is accelerating. So that is what we do, MA into A. So this is the free body diagram. Free body diagram of the object A, tension, a force of gravity mg, weight, and MA into A. So this is the free body diagram. So this is the concept we have learned and you also know it. Now, in the inertial frame I write the object, object is in the inertial frame. Object in the non-inertial frame, here object in the inertial frame. Maybe I can write object. Object in inertial frame. In the object in the inertial frame, also we put a pseudo force, that is mb into A, opposite to in which the direction is, the train is traveling. Now, when you put these pseudo forces, because in a non-inertial frame, the Newton's laws, they do not hold good. That is what we know. The Newton's laws, they do not hold good in non-inertial frame. The moment you put pseudo forces, the Newton's laws hold good. Now you can write F is equal to ma. So here, as this person observes this object, it is at rest, though there is a deflection. So he will do sigma fx, that means the net force in the x direction is equal to 0, sigma fy is equal to 0, and one can calculate using that the value of A. Okay. So the Newton's laws is valid. This is the mathematical formulation and the concepts that we have learned. I am just revising it without going into the proof. Here what he finds, this observer, what he finds that this man is accelerating backward. That is what he finds. So again he will apply Newton's laws of motion. So he will see that it is accelerating backward. So there must be a force according to Newton's laws. And what will be that force? mb into A. Okay, so he can apply the Newton's laws. So two important points that we learned from here is, the one point is whether the object is inside the non-inertial frame or whether it is outside the non-inertial frame, that means in the inertial frame. In both the objects, we have to put a pseudo force ma into A or mb, but that means mass into acceleration in both of them. and then we can apply Newton's laws of motion. I hope this is clear to you, and this is already this you have already studied. Okay. Now quickly I will revise again the other things, and that is in the rotating frames what happens. Okay, we are just dealing with now the main formulas without going into the proof. Okay, so the rotating frames, the pseudo forces. So there are three pseudo forces: centrifugal force, Coriolis force, and Euler force. In the centrifugal force, a rough diagram I have drawn here. That is a frame which is rotating. The observer is here, and there are two objects. One object is inside the rotating frame, other object is outside the rotating frames. Good. Now, the centrifugal force, the formula, the expression for the centrifugal force is minus m omega cross r. What is this omega? This omega is the angular velocity of the frame. R is the distance from the origin. It is rotating and there is an origin, center. So distance from the center. Now it is r vector. So basically it is a vectorial distance. Now if it is a three-dimensional object, then this r vector is the vectorial distance from the axis of rotation. Alright? So at that time, r is the distance from the axis of rotation and not from the origin. But for a two-dimensional case, as we see, it is the distance from the center of rotation. Okay. What are the properties of centrifugal force? If you calculate this vector, that is omega cross r minus, it is always away from the center of rotation. It is always away from the axis of rotation. Sorry, in a 3D object, in a 3D situation, it is always away from the axis of rotation. So outward from the center of rotation, or whatever. Second thing is, this particular force, that is centrifugal force, it acts on a stationary body as well as moving body. So whether the body is stationary or moving, it is always there. Centrifugal force is always there. The second one is the Coriolis force minus 2m omega cross Vr. Again, what is omega? It is the angular velocity of the frame. Vr, this is very important. Vr is the velocity of the body with respect to the frame. It is very, very important. Vr is the velocity of the body or the object with respect to the frame. So, if a body is having a velocity with respect to the frame, Coriolis force will act. So, there will be a Coriolis force along with the centrifugal force. Okay. Third is the Euler force, that is minus m d omega by dt into r, cross r. As you see this expression, if the angular velocity of the rotating frame is not constant and it is changing with time, that means it is having an angular acceleration, then this force will also act. Presently, I have not taken any such case. So, presently we are not dealing with this expression, but this is also there sometimes, you can take help of this expression. So, this is basically acts in the tangential direction and acts when the omega of the frame is not constant. So, these are the three forces and their expressions, the vector sign as well as these minus signs are very, very important. Okay. Now, let us go to the, just after this simple formulas, let me tell you about the, as I told you in the beginning, that we have confusion, and the confusion arises because There are a large number of cases and each case is very different. There are different types of cases and that is why the confusion arises. So I have written confusion. Why confusion? Because there are different cases and they are not treated simultaneously together. So what I have done, I have grouped them into different groups, all the examples together. There are major two types, A type and B type. Now observer is always in the rotating frame. Observer is there in the rotating frame. The object that he is seeing, that he is looking at, it may be inside the frame. If it is inside the frame, I call it A type. If it is outside the frame, I call it B type. Okay, just for sectioning. Now as you see, in the A type, that means inside the frame, an object is stationary with respect to the frame. An object is stationary with respect to the frame. That is one type. We don't feel the centrifugal force there. Second is, an object just moves or tends to move. Just moves or tends to move. We feel the effect of centrifugal force. Like a car, when it's going around the turn, you feel a push outside. Third, an object moves inside the frame. Now your Coriolis force is coming. An object moves inside the frame. Case A. Case A is, though it is in the frame, but it is not touching the frame. So we feel the Coriolis force. We feel the Coriolis force. Case 2, we don't feel the Coriolis. That means it is a constrained type of motion. Okay, but Coriolis force is there, but that feeling is not there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different cases, and each one I will be dealing with some 1 or 2 examples. In the B type, objects are stationary on earth and objects are moving on the earth. So these 2 cases I will be dealing with. Now let me tell you, in order to get a feeling of the centrifugal force or a Coriolis force, we will start from here, not from here. Usually our textbook, they start from here, and these examples are not given at all. But I would like to start from here because, as I said, when the things are stationary, it is that time we can understand things better. That what actually is the Coriolis force and what actually is the centrifugal force. Good. So now let us come to the second part. In the second part, I will be dealing with understanding this pseudo force when we have a linear system. All right? When we have a linear system. Okay, so let us see the ways of physics, the way a physicist or a scientist looks at things. First of all, a scientist or a physicist, what he does, he observes the phenomena in nature. And then he makes a mathematical model, some formulas. Then that model should hold good for all the cases, isn't it? Like Isaac Newton, he saw something, apple falling from the tree, and then he formulated some formula. Okay, the law of gravitation. That law of gravitation holds good for all objects. Now, exactly the similar manner in our discussion, there is an event. Now, event or an object, that is something, that is one. The observer, the person who is observing that event, that observer may be at different places. Suppose, say for example, a person is standing at the station. Now, another man at the station will see him standing at rest. A man traveling in a train will see him moving either with uniform velocity, if the train is moving with uniform velocity backward, or if the train is accelerating, he will see that the man is accelerating backward. Suppose something is going vertical, a rocket suppose say, so suppose it is going with a acceleration A, so a observer in the rocket will see the person standing at the station going downward with an acceleration A. So different observers will different the same object differently, and accordingly every observer, he or she has to formulate some kind of model, some kind of mathematical formulas to explain that behavior. Okay, and that should hold good for all the phenomena in his frame or her frame. Now, let us start understanding the pseudo force. Okay, to understand the pseudo force, the best thing is, first of all, we take the linear systems, because rotational systems is a little bit complicated. Linear systems, the systems which are linear means moving in a straight line but accelerated. I take back the same example, a train accelerating in the forward direction, the observer is inside the train. So all the, I have extended it little further, so now I have taken 5 cases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In all the cases, the train is accelerating in the forward direction with the same acceleration, the observer is inside. Now let us see what is there in each one of them. In the first case, as the train is accelerating forward, he observes that there is a person standing at the station, and that man is moving backward with an acceleration A. First example. Second example is quite interesting. The observer is there inside the train, accelerating train, and there is a fly inside the train. Now, inside it is made vacuum. Suppose say there is vacuum. Now, you may ask that if there is a vacuum, then how can a fly move around? So that is a different phenomena. But let us consider that it is a vacuum and there is a fly inside the train. Now the whole train is at rest. Now suddenly it accelerates, the train accelerates. What will happen? This observer in the train, he will see that this fly is going backward with an acceleration A. Number 3, again the train is at rest and there is a pendulum, suddenly it accelerates. So it will see that there is a pendulum, the bob of the pendulum goes backward and with an angle, and there is an angle, and after that it stays over there. That is the observation here. In the case 4, there is a block kept above the surface or the floor of the train. As the train accelerates, the friction between the block and the floor is little less. That means slippery floor. So the block, goes backward. That is, he observed, person over here. Fifth case, the block is stationary on the surface of on the floor of the train. So I have taken 5 cases to understand what is the pseudo force in a linear systems. When we understand in case of linear systems, it will be very easy for us to get a feel what is there in the rotating frames. Now, what I feel, it is very important, listen carefully, what I feel that the first 2 cases, they are the pure cases, and there we can understand the pseudo force better. Because in all other cases, it is a little bit perturbed because of some other forces, polluted. These 2 cases are the pure cases. Let us see how. So, I take these 2 cases as pure cases. Alright? Let us take the case 1. As the observer is there, he will observe that this person who is standing, he is going backward with an acceleration A. Why he is observing so? Because this person is at rest, and obviously he will be at rest. This person is moving with an acceleration a. So, relative to this, since the observer is inside the frame, with relative to this frame, he will see the person going backward. How he can justify it? He will put a force in the backward direction ma, in a direction opposite to in which the frame is accelerating. And that is how he will justify the Newton's second law of motion, that this person is accelerating backward and there is a force ma backward. Let us take the second case. Here, the fly, now an observer in the inertial frame, what will he observe? He will observe that this, suppose the train is at rest at that time. He will observe that this fly is at rest and it will maintain inertia of rest. Okay. So, and the train starts accelerating. Okay. The train starts. That is what he will observe, the reality from the inertial frame. This person who is over here in the train, since he is accelerating, he is not able to see his acceleration, his velocity. So he will see that this particle or this ant is going backward with an acceleration a. He will put a pseudo force which is ma in a direction negative to it, negative 2 in which the train is accelerating. So, in these two cases, that is the case number 1 and case number 2, what we find? There are a lot of things that we find. The first thing is the pseudo force will act whether the person is outside or inside the frame. The pseudo force is a matter of observer in a non-inertial frame which is accelerating. Okay, so it is just a matter of observation. It is a matter of observation by an observer who is there in the non-inertial frame. Now, why I say that this is the best example to understand pseudo force is because it is a pure case. Here, no other force is working, and that's why when it is only pseudo force is working, it is better to understand. Now, as you see that this pseudo force, why is it arising? It is arising because of two reasons. The first is that this particle, any particle, if it is at rest, it will remain at rest, inertia of rest. If it is in motion, it will maintain its motion, inertia of motion. So this particle is at rest, it is maintaining its rest. This man who is an observer in the accelerating frame, he is accelerating forward. So with respect to him, he is looking at him and he finds that he is going backward. So it is just a matter of relative motion between the two. Relative motion between the frame and the observer. Isn't it? It is just a relative motion. And because of that, he invokes the pseudo force. So the pseudo force is basically purely because of kinematics. It is not a force by itself. Seen from an inertial frame, it is not at all a force by itself, but it is purely a kinematics. That means a relative motion between the two. The object which basically maintains its inertia of rest or inertia of motion and the frame. And that's all. But a person in the frame, in order to justify his observation, he has made some mathematical formulation. And there, there he has that force. He puts that force. So for him, that force is real. For him, that force is real because that is how he can explain his observation. If we go to the other cases, that is your 3, 4 and 5, there what happens, Now the object is not independent. Now it is interacting with the frames. How? Here it is interacting through a string. So there is a tension force which basically pulls the body, and that is how it gets the acceleration. Here it is a friction of the train that gives the force, and because of that it gets an acceleration in the forward direction. In the last case, it is the most difficult case to get a feel of the pseudo force, because there is no movement at all and the frictional force given by the train is equal to the pseudo force. Alright. Now, so I hope that from these two examples, and I have written down whatever I told. So from these two examples, since they are the purest example of a pseudo force, we get a feel of what the pseudo force is. It is just a matter of relative motion arising because of inertia of rest or inertia of motion. Exactly the same way we will see in the circular motion also, in the rotating frames. All these cases we will see. But before that, in order to understand a little bit better, I would like to show you the free body diagrams of each one of them. So we will see just now what is the free body diagram. Okay, so let us start with the examples of rotating frames. So we will see both centrifugal force and the Coriolis force. Now here again we are taking, just like the case of linear systems, we are taking the first example, and I feel that is one of the most important example to study the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force, because the object is outside. Now when the object is outside, as you see, the example is that there is an observer in the rotating frame, and as you see the observer is rotating, it is rotating with angular velocity omega. A coin is kept outside, just outside the circle, just outside the frame. So what will happen? So this is the view from the earth frame. Okay. Now, in the rotating frame, in the frame of the observer, in the rotating frame, what will he observe? That is the question. What will he observe? So here I have kept the coin. So can you tell me in which direction the coin will rotate, or in which direction the coin will go? What is his observation? Now it's a very interesting case. The way we can understand is, as you see, that this person is going from here to here. When he is going from here to here, he will see the coin towards his right. When he is half the rotation, he will see the coin just at the back of him. So, if in this frame, in the rotating frame view, in the frame of the observer is at rest, because he will see at rest. So, suppose say we make him rest over here. Now, towards the right, that means he will not see moving like this, but he will see it is moving like this. So here, and when he is here, he will see the coin to be on the opposite side. So, if the frame is rotating anti-clockwise, the observer will see the coin rotating in the clockwise direction around this particular frame. Or you can imagine that this coin is kept just above this, that also one can think, but this is more a practical example. Now let us see, let us make this figure here. So here I make the coin like this, okay, and it is rotating with again angular velocity omega. Now, so the coin is rotating in this direction. Now as you see, when he is observing, so we see that how the principles of physics or the laws of physics are consistent everywhere. So as he sees that this coin is rotating, so something is rotating in a circle. So when something is rotating in a circle, according to the laws of physics, there is an acceleration towards the center, which we call centripetal acceleration. That is, magnitude is v square by r, v square by r. And in order to have that acceleration, we need a force. What will be the magnitude of the force? M into v square by r towards the center of the circle. M into v square by r towards the center. Otherwise, a particle cannot rotate in a circle. So, the magnitude, the estimated magnitude of the force, the net force has to be towards the center, mv square by r. Now, this coin is totally outside the frame, but so what? According to our laws, this observer, what are the forces that he will apply? The first force is the centrifugal force. So let us draw the centrifugal force over here. So centrifugal force is outside, and what will be the magnitude? Magnitude will be m omega square r. M omega square r. Actually mv square by r or m omega square r. Now let me ask you a very important question. What is this omega? Is this omega this particular omega? No, it is not. It is this omega. Alright? Omega is the angular velocity of the frame, because here it is, we are getting the answers, but at some other place we may make mistakes. So it is this omega, m omega square r. So the angular velocity of the frame, it is on this side. But see, the problem is I want a force inside, m omega square r inside, but it is outside. So how to go about it? This is rotating in a circle. So there is a net force inside. There should be. But my force, the centrifugal force itself, is outside, m omega square r. So you are expecting something? So that is, let us see, let us calculate and see. Now, will there be any other kind of force? There will be, other than centrifugal force, there is a second force is, pseudo force, is your Coriolis force. So let us see where is the Coriolis force. Now this, at this point, this is having a velocity v in this direction. Okay. And what will be the v? V is the magnitude, v is equal to r omega. So, whenever a body is having a velocity with respect to a frame, rotating frame, there will be a Coriolis force. And what will be the magnitude and direction? Minus 2m omega cross v. Minus 2m omega cross v. Vr actually. Now, Vr, we know this is your Vr in this direction. What is the omega? Here again there is a probability of mistake. Omega is not this omega. Omega is the omega of the rotating frame. So omega of the rotating frame. So omega of the rotating frame, that means this is the direction of omega. And this is the direction of v. So omega cross v. Omega cross v. As you see, this is the omega and this is v. So omega cross v is in this direction. Omega cross v. Okay? But it is minus 2m omega cross v. So it is that direction. So minus 2m omega v, and v is equal to r omega. So it will have this force, that is, I am drawing in the yellow color, double this magnitude, so somewhere here. So in this direction that force is, and that magnitude of the force will be 2m omega square r. So 2m omega square r. 2m omega square r. This is the force in this direction. This is your Coriolis force and this is your centrifugal force. So now the resultant force will be 2m omega square r minus m omega square r towards the center. So my net resultant force will be something like the same magnitude of the arrow. Let me make. This is the one in the, so this will be, the magnitude will be m omega square r. This is the resultant force towards the center. And now we see that things are so consistent. So this is your centrifugal, this is your centrifugal force, and this is your Coriolis force. This is your Coriolis force. And this is your resultant, resultant force. So this is your resultant actually. This is your resultant. Resultant force. So it is so interesting that this particle is not at all in the frame. It is outside. This observer is observing that it is rotating. And then you see centrifugal force is there, Coriolis force is there, and net resultant force that it is coming m omega square r, because of which he observes that the particle is moving in a circle. So examples of this kind where the particle is purely outside the frame, that tells us, that gives us a feel that what actually is a centrifugal force. So between force or the Coriolis force, it is arising because of relative motion between the frame and the object. So it is not a force by itself. From an inertial frame, if you see, it is not a force, but it is because this person is observing that kind. And why he is observing? He is observing because this particular body, which is outside, that body is having a inertia of rest. Okay, so it is not moving. It is at rest with respect to inertial frame. But this person, he will see it moving. Okay, so here again it is one of the purest example where we can see the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force. It is just a kind of relative motion because the object that we are observing, that object is having a inertia of rest. So it is not doing anything. How I am observing the body, depending on that, the relative motion, depending on that, my centrifugal force and the Coriolis force is coming into picture. So even in a rotating frame, so it is only because of a rotating frame. It is a frame dependent force. So one of the best example to get a feel of what the centrifugal and the Coriolis force is. Okay, so let us go to the next example, and this example is also very similar to the one, but little bit different. Here what's happening, that there is a frame which is rotating, as you see, it is rotating. Now at this point the person releases a body at this point. Now obviously this particular body is having a velocity. So the moment the body is released, with this particular tangential velocity, it will go. Okay, it will go in a straight line. Now this straight line motion will be observed by a observer from earth frame. So from the earth frame, he will, one observer will observe that it is moving in a straight line. But as you see that this particular observer who is there in the rotating frame, he is moving in the rotating frame. So as you see, he is moving, and this is also going. So what he will see, that this particular body which is being thrown from here or released from here is going outward. So number 1 is going outward. In the number 2 also he will see that it is going outward, because this is moving, at the same time this is also moving. So it is outward movement. So that is why sometimes the centrifugal force, we say that it is an outward force. So it is outward, something moving out. But oh my God, what we see, that in the third position it is going back a little bit. In the fourth, when we reach the position, we see that it is quite, back. It is not, it should be here, but it is back. So why it is back? It is back because the centrifugal force effect is that it is going out. It is away from the center. That is what the field, that is what we know about the centrifugal force, is that it is away from the center. And this is the effect of the centrifugal effect. But if you calculate the Coriolis force, that is again omega cross v. Now v, you have to calculate, the v is the velocity of this relative to this one. So this is going in this direction, this is in this direction, so you can find out the relative velocity by subtracting this. It is somewhere in this direction actually. So omega cross v will be coming out in this direction somewhere, which is almost perpendicular to your centrifugal force. So it will be coming in the backward direction, in this direction, and because of this, the Coriolis term, as the velocity is increasing, no, velocity is not increasing. So the velocity is in the straight line only. If the magnitude in the straight, the velocity is a straight line, and the magnitude will, but the effect that you can see, effect will be prominent with time, that it is lagging behind. Here also it was there in the position number 2. Here also it was there. But as it moves, you see the deflection. Alright, you see the deflection because of the Coriolis force. It will be there constant throughout, because V is actually, the direction of V is changing. The direction of V is changing. But the magnitude of the V is, this is V, this V, both are constant. So magnitude is same, but the direction is changing. So this is again how you see that a body is outside the frame, but you see both centrifugal force effect, that is going away, and something going back. So the Coriolis effect. So these are the examples where, I must say that these are the pure examples where there is no mixture of friction and other things, because it is not touching the frame. And that is why you see the effect of both this pure effect, that means the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force, and the effect is how, the two bodies, the frame is rotating and the object is moving. So how I am observing it? So it is basically purely a kinematics, I mean that relative motion, how the observer in the rotating frame observes the other body. And it is really really good to see when there is no other force. So these two examples, I consider them as one of the best examples to understand these two effects. Now, let us come to the third example. Now here, again it is an interesting effect. Here, something is moving inside the frame. Now here it was totally outside. Here something is happening, that something is moving inside the frame, but it is not touching the frame. It is not touching the surface, but something happening. So it is almost similar to there, that it was totally outside. Here something is happening inside, but it is not touching the frame. The moment it will touch, that purity will be lost. So it is not touching the frame. So I have taken two examples of this kind. Now, this example is better to understand that effect. What we will understand here is that what actually is a Coriolis force. Now let us see. This particular frame, again a merry-go-round, and you will see a lot of videos also. This merry-go-round, and it is rotating, the omega is this, it is rotating like this. Okay. Now there are two players. One is standing at the circumference and other is standing at the center. This person throws a ball onto him. How will the ball go? Or how will this particular man will see the the direction of the ball, the trajectory of the ball? Or will he be able to hold the ball, catch the ball? Now this person, he throws a ball onto him, and will the ball go in a straight line? So let us see that. So can you tell me that if this person is throwing the ball, how will they see the ball? In this person, how will he see? Will he be able to catch it? Will it be in a straight line? Because when he is throwing the ball, he just throws to him only, looking at him, he throws the ball. You see, we have to consider this is omega, alright, omega, and this is the velocity. So omega means it is this way, omega, alright, omega and v. So omega cross v. Omega is the frame velocity, it is this way, and it is velocity is this. So omega cross v what is the direction of omega cross v? Omega cross v, it is this way actually. And when this will throw this ball onto him, let us take this one first. So it is the omega, this is the omega, and this is the v. So omega cross v, this is the v. So let us take this is the v towards him, and this is the omega. So omega cross v is this side, as you see. Omega is this one. So omega cross v is this way, and minus of that, it is this way. So the force it will experience is on this side. Is this clear? This is the omega, this is the velocity. So omega cross v is towards me, so minus of that is towards that side. So this ball will go like this, though he is throwing it onto him, but the ball will look like this. Initially it will start with the like this. This is the path of the ball. Good? Now again, as you see this one, you can calculate omega again is this vertical, v is this. So omega cross v is that direction, minus of that. So this person will see this way. This is the direction of this one, and this is the direction of this one. And there are a lot of videos on this actually. So as you see that why, so this is the direction of this ball actually. And this is the direction of this one. So this person will miss the ball. Okay. So as you see that this kind of motion is purely because of a relative motion between the two. Because the moment he is throwing the ball and this frame is rotating, so this person will see the ball in a curved manner, that it is something going towards left of him. So it is purely because of the motion, the relative motion between the frame and the object. So that is actually your Coriolis force. Now let us come to the example of the earth. Now in the earth is rotating. Okay. So earth in its strict sense is a non-inertial frame. For all practical purposes we take that as a inertial frame, but it is not a inertial frame because it is rotating. Okay. So earth is rotating. So it is a non-inertial frame. So obviously we will see the effect, Coriolis and the centrifugal. Now what happens that this is the northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, There are regions like, if you take 30 degrees, 60 degrees like that, there is a low pressure region, and then again there is a high pressure region. At the top, there is a high pressure. So obviously, the wind will move from high pressure to the low pressure. So it should go straight, but it doesn't go. The way we see on the earth is that when the wind is flowing like this, now it is difficult here, so I have brought one ball. Okay, let me show you. Well, this is the earth, alright? Let us see, this is the earth. And here, suppose say the wind moves from here. Okay. And what is the omega? Omega is something like this. This is the omega. Okay, and V is this. So omega cross V is towards me. Minus of that is towards this. So this is the way, this is the direction the air will feel the force. And this side we call east, this side is west. This side is north, this side is south. So they are moving towards the east. They are moving towards the east. So here in the figure towards the right. So because of this is again the Coriolis effect. So purely we can see the Coriolis effect because the wind is moving and it is not in direct contact with the surface of the earth. The earth actually is moving. Okay. So you see the effect of the Coriolis force. On the other side, the wind moving from the north pole will move as directed like this arrow. Again you can calculate that way. So I hope the direction of omega is clear to you. This is the direction of omega and this is the direction of V. So again that side, this is the direction of omega and this is the direction of V downward. So you can calculate. In the southern hemisphere also you can calculate, and accordingly we see the movement of the winds in the surface of the earth, and they are known as easterlies, westerlies, polar winds. All these kinds of names are there depending on again in which directions they are going. So that's good. Okay, so I hope these two examples are also quite good to show us the effect of Coriolis force. Now you may say, what happens to the centrifugal? Perfectly there. Centrifugal forces, they are outward, but we don't see that effect that much. Anyway, it is outward, so that is there. But we don't see the effect, but this effect we see prominently because the direction is changing. Okay, then let us take another case, that is case 2. Here, so I have taken different cases so that the idea is clear that what actually is a centrifugal and the Coriolis force. Now the next example that I have taken, the object moves on the frame. Here, the first time the object is interacting with the frame. Okay, so here it is a constrained motion. As you see, constrained motion. So two constrained motions I have taken. Sometimes the confusion here is that where is the Coriolis force? The first example. Now this example I have taken from your book, Kleppner. Okay, in the non-inertial frame. Anyway, this particular figure that I had taken, because whatever things I have taken, I must say, this figure is taken from a site which is known as hyperphysics. It is a nice site, and you can see that. Okay, so this problem is taken from Kleppner. It is an interesting problem which we have seen. There is a wire, alright, there is a wire, and in that wire there is some bead. Now this bead, as the wire rotates in the in this way, anti-clockwise, with a angular velocity omega, this bead goes outward. Now you can view this from inertial frame and non-inertial frame. All these examples we can view from both the frame. Now why the ball or the bead is going outward? The bead is going outward because this is the first case we are dealing with, when the bodies are interacting with the rotating surface. the ball has a tendency, because all these forces are arising because the bodies, they have a tendency either to be in its state of rest or to be in its state of motion in a straight line. So the moment it is rotating, this particular bead has a tendency to be on a straight line, but it is moving. The moment it is moving, but it still has a tendency, so for every point it moves, it has a tendency to go forward, move in the straight line. But at the same time, this is rotating. So I can show you using my pen. Like, suppose say this is the rod and the bead is actually moving. Suppose say this is the bead. Okay. So it has a tendency to move. For the moment it is moving like this, it has a tendency to move like in a straight line like this. Okay. So it moves little bit. Again it is moving like this. It moves little bit because every time it has a tendency to move in a straight line. It doesn't want to change its direction according to Newton's first law of motion. So that is why as it is rotating, so every time it is moving little bit in the straight line and finally it moves to the outward direction. So that is how we see the effect from the inertial frame. From the non-inertial frame, you have to solve it. What we do, that since it is a rotating frame, we have to apply a force outward from the center of rotation. So F centrifugal. Okay. Now our question is, where is the Coriolis force? Okay. So as you see how things are consistent. This particular wire, this is giving a force because this is rotating the bead. So this is giving a force. So that force is the normal reaction. Alright. Now if you calculate the Coriolis force minus 2m omega cross v, you will see that it is going in the opposite direction. That is your F Coriolis. Now as you see that an observer in this rotating frame, he will see that the bead is going outward, but he will not see any deflection on the other side perpendicular to it. He will not see that he is rotating. So on the direction perpendicular to the radial direction r, that is your tangential direction, he will not see anything, any motion. So obviously the normal reaction and Coriolis, they should balance each other. So everything, as you see that the things are consistent, once we have developed the theory or the law, it is following everywhere. So it is consistent. Now let us come to another example which is again very, very interesting. Now here what happens that there is an ant. There is an ant here, and that ant is moving in a straight line. And there is a frame, basically merry-go-round, which is rotating. Okay. And the ant is moving away from it. Now but there is a straight line I have made, and I have told the ant that you have to move in a straight line. So the ant is moving in a straight line. Now the question comes here, the confusion comes, that obviously there will be a centrifugal force. But where is the Coriolis force? Isn't it? Because if an ant is having a velocity with respect to the frame, then it must be having a Coriolis force. So where is the Coriolis force? Can you think about it? Where actually is the Coriolis force here? Though I have drawn it, because the space is very little, so I have drawn it before. So can you understand the Coriolis force here? Okay, let me explain to you. Suppose say the ant is not moving. It is just there in the frame. So it is rotating with the frame. So obviously it is stationary. So, but from an inertial observer, we find that it is moving in a circle. When it is moving in a circle, there should be a resultant force towards the center. Otherwise it will not move. Who is providing that force? Friction is providing that force. So I have made Fr, that is friction, C means center, towards the center. So that is the friction Obviously, from a non-inertial frame, now that is from the inertial frame, we have seen that there is a friction which rotates the body in a circle. From a non-inertial frame, a centrifugal force anyway we have to apply. And we know why the centrifugal force comes from the above examples. We have got a feeling. So the centrifugal force is equal to the frictional force. So because of that, the body is at rest and this person is happy that he can apply Newton's laws of motion. Now, suppose say this ant is having a motion in the outward direction, in a straight line. What will happen? As you can think that it is, as it is going in the straight line, his radius r, distance from the center, is increasing. That means if I calculate the tangential velocity, v is equal to r omega. V is equal to r omega is changing. That means r is changing. So there is an acceleration. As it is going away, the tangential velocity is increasing. So there is an acceleration. So if there is an acceleration, somebody has to provide that acceleration. Because this, what I am telling you, I am looking from an inertial point of, inertial observer. That he sees that the ant is moving out. So basically, his tangential velocity is increasing. So there has to be a force. Who will provide that force? That force will basically come from the rotating frame through the friction. So friction is basically giving it. So I have written FRT, that is friction tangential, in the tangential direction. Now, if you calculate the Coriolis force, it will come, the Coriolis force you will get in this direction, just opposite to your FRT, F Coriolis. So they cancel each other because the observer in the rotating frame, he will not see any, any acceleration perpendicular to in the direction in which the ant is moving. In the direction perpendicular to it, he will not see any acceleration. So obviously the two forces should be equal and opposite to cancel each other. Now you see the interesting thing. If I ask you calculate F Coriolis, what will be the Coriolis force? What will be the magnitude of the Coriolis force? It is 2m omega cross v. So 2m omega v. Okay? Fine. Now I ask you, I don't equate, I ask you, you calculate this FRT, that is frictional force, because of the changing radial distance. How much will be, how can you calculate that? This you have, we have learned this in the chapter of polar coordinates. Because we have learned that when something is going out, when the r is changing, at that time there is an acceleration. And what is that acceleration? In the theta cap direction, that is your 2r dot theta dot. And we know that in the 2r dot theta dot, one component is coming from, because the r radial distance is increasing, and because of that the tangential velocity is increasing. There we don't say tangential because there was a curve actually. So theta cap we say. Here we can say tangential in a circle. But there we don't say that. So one part of r dot theta dot is coming from there. The other r dot theta dot is coming because of r cap, the direction of r cap is changing. Because of that another r dot theta dot is coming when we differentiate that r cap. So this particular you get is 2r dot theta dot. Now what will be 2r dot theta dot? 2r dot is v and theta dot omega. So again you get 2m v omega, exactly the same which we calculated for F Coriolis. So F Coriolis is basically balanced by the frictional force which the rotating frame is providing onto the legs of the ant. So how you see how things are so consistent in physics. Once you apply the formula and then you see that everything is consistent. Good. Now let us come to another example which I said A2. Okay. These are very common examples. Here what happens that there is a road and a car is moving in a curved path. This is very common example. We all travel in a car, and the car travels it is not banking, but I meant to say it is traveling in a curved path actually. All the curves wherever we turn. So these are the turns actually. Sometimes the turns are sharp, sometimes they are not. Okay, so it is turning actually. Okay. Now when it turns, what we find that if I keep a coin over here in the dashboard, it goes to the outer end. Okay, it goes to the outer end. Also, a person sitting on the outer side of the just beside the driver's seat, he will also feel that he gets a pull outside. So somebody is throwing him out. So that kind of feel he has. Why does it happen? It is a very, very interesting case, as you can see. Here, suppose say the coin is over here. This is from a non-inertial frame. The coin is over here and the driver is sitting like this and the car is traveling. Now, whenever the car is rotating around a curve, this particular coin, so here was the initial picture of the car and the coin. Now, this particular coin, it wants to stay in its state of motion in a straight line. So as you see, this is the straight line I have drawn. Alright? This is a straight line. This particular coin tries to be in the straight line, but at the time the car has turned. Okay, so what will happen? This particular coin, which was basically here, this was the initial position, suppose say, whatever the initial position. So, it will move towards the outer edge, and that is what, it will see. Initial position, wherever it was here, it moves towards the outer edge. So, it is just a matter of, relative motion. The relative motion between the frame, the rotating frame, and the body or the object that we are observing. And why it happens? Because that body tries to be in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line. So, but because of the friction and the next case we will see, because of the friction basically it does not. But it tries to be in its state of rest or of uniform motion, and it is because of that we see a kind of relative motion between the two. And that is what causes the Coriolis force, the centrifugal force, or the Coriolis force also, as we have seen over here in these two examples. The last example. Now the last example is the first example that is given in the textbook. This is very, very popular example in the textbook. Now this particular example, what I feel is the centrifugal effect. You see the list. So that is why sometimes we feel that the centrifugal force is basically something like a mathematical entity, but it is not. We feel the effect in the frame. We feel the force in the frame. In the frame it is real. So here, this is the least I can say the effect is seen. What happens that there is a rotating frame, and in that frame a coin is there. Now the coin doesn't move, so it is moving with the frame. It is moving with the frame. So these things, basically it is there in the books. This is from the inertial point of view, that it is rotating in a circle, and when it is rotating in a circle, there is a net force which is acting towards the center, which is your frictional force. In the rotating frame, obviously this is the real force which is there. So a centrifugal force m omega square r is outward, so both cancels, and the observer here observes that this particular coin is at rest. So he is satisfied that the Newton's laws are valid and he can apply it. But that is not our aim of study. Our aim of study today is to feel that what actually is the centrifugal force. What actually is the this is what we have seen in the text. That is perfectly fine. This is mathematics perfectly fine. But what actually is the centrifugal force? That is what we are trying to understand over here. Now, this particular coin, in its state of, it is in the state of motion and wants to continue in the state of motion. But because of the friction, it is not. So it is moving along with this frame. Now, if I make the friction 0 here, suddenly friction 0, immediately it will move in the straight line. It will not immediately, but yes, it will move in the straight line actually. Yes, it will move in the straight line. Now, the moment it moves in the straight line, basically suddenly you cannot make friction 0. But if you make the friction 0, it will move in the straight line. And at that time, this particular frame, the observer is also rotating. So the observer will see, as it is moving in the straight line, as the case we discussed, we see that it is going outward. So there you feel that effect. Alright. But this is the case where you least feel the effect because the frame is having the friction. And because of the friction, that effect, that moving in a the moment, the inertia of motion, that is, or inertia of rest or inertia of motion here, that is not observed because of the friction. So you don't get a feel of the centrifugal force here. But of course, mathematically, frictional force is equal to m omega square r, and that is why I have chosen this example towards the end. Okay, so that is the end of the lecture. Now, the basics or the whole thing, the essence of this lecture is, the first point or second point that I would like to tell you, that lot of times we have confusion that whether this is a pseudo force or it is a real force. It is a real force within a non-inertial frame. That means in a rotating frame, we feel the force. Alright. Why we feel the force? Because our purpose is to feel the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force. Mathematics anyway is given in the books. But what actually is a Coriolis force? What actually is a centrifugal force? That is what we are trying to see. And as we see in these examples, where the object is not interacting with the frame, those are the examples where we can really understand. That is, it is just a relative motion. It is because of the relative motion. The objects which are there, they want to be in its state of rest or of uniform motion. Okay. So here, it is purely outside the system and it wants to be in its state of rest. So how do I observe? So I see, because I am accelerating. I am an observer. I am accelerating. With respect to myself, what is that I see? So the relative motion between the observer and between the frame and the object. And because of that, the Coriolis force and the centrifugal force is coming. So this is very, very important. The first is that it is the force in the non-inertial frame. It is arising purely because of relative motion, and the objects, they want to be in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line, and that is why there is a kind of relative motion between the two, and the centrifugal and the Coriolis force arises because of that. I hope you can go through these lectures once or twice and think about it. So the moment you think about it, you will get a better and better feeling that what actually is the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force. And that is actually our aim of this lecture, to get a feel of, a complete understanding and feel of what actually is the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force. So good, thank you very much. Okay, let me ask you one question which I forgot. It is a very interesting experiment. The experiment was done by, I think, a group made by Professor H.C. Verma. Actually, I had a lot of interaction with him. He is a great physicist, a great teacher, and a great person. A lot of social service also he is doing. So let me ask a very interesting question to you. That experiment was developed by his group, and though I have not seen till today that video, but I can explain to you that question, and I would like you to solve that question. The question is, suppose there is a ring. The ring, suppose you can think that this is a kind of ring, alright, and this ring, there is a vertical axis, and this ring is rotating in that particular axis, alright. This is a ring, and this ring is rotating in that axis. Now here I keep a small, bead kind of thing. Here I keep a small bead. The moment it rotates, this bead will go up. Okay, this bead will go up, but the maximum it can go up is till theta is equal to pi by 2 or 90 degree. Beyond that it will not go. So try to solve that problem from the non-inertial or rotating frame. Write down the equations, write down the forces, and try to solve it. It is a very, very interesting problem that this particular bead goes up. Why it is going up? If you write down the forces, you can understand. But the maximum theta it can go is theta is equal to 90 degree. So try this question for your assignment. Okay, thank you.